What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dampa Valley coming at you with an unplanned podcast video rant because people are mad. Defenses suck. The game has been made too easy on offensive players. Luka dropped 73 points on Friday night. Joel Embiid had 70 earlier in the week. Devin Booker and Cat both got to the 60s in losses. The game is broken. Bring back defense. What happened to this game that I love? Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid are ruining the NBA. Or offenses are ruining the NBA. Or poor defensive rules and officiating are ruining the NBA. I mean this with all sincerity and not meant to be a hot take. Shut the fuck up. I will have a conversation about whether you think certain defensive rules need to be changed. You want to bring back hand checking? That's everyone's solution to this. That's not going to do anything. We'll get into that in a second. And maybe it'll do something. But hand checking then in yesteryear was just different. But offenses are the way they are now, not because of officiating, not because of some of the defensive rules that have changed. They're this way, this potent, because players are so damn skillful. And I'm getting a little tired of people. One, here's my main problem with this is I don't see, you want to criticize what Cat was doing in Minnesota. I didn't see the Devin Booker game when he dropped 60 plus. I saw a huge chunk of that Cat game. Yeah, the shot hunting there was egregious. You want to criticize that and say that's why these players are scoring so much? Okay, fine. You want to have a conversation about teams actually having bad defenses, not trying on defense, not adjusting on defense, not being good enough on defense, or being unfairly officiated, or seeing how, well, they were able to hand check. Like, Joel Embiid wouldn't have dropped 70 or Luka Doncic wouldn't have dropped 73. I have an issue with, you see something like that. I'm going to use Luka's as an example, the most recent one, where there's not this egregious shot hunting from him. Yeah, there's like maybe shots he wouldn't have taken. Some of them were going in, though. And then towards the end of the game, when the Hawks were just really hard trapping him, like just going after him, he was passing up looks when he could have gone to, this was before he eclipsed 70, when he could have been taking these other jumpers. And he wasn't. And so I take issue with, we see this game that this player doing this absurd shot making with absurd skill, and it's super entertaining. And it's, oh, we only did that because of the defensive rules, or defenses suck now. What happened to this game that I love? And so that's what we see something like that, and that's my reaction. Now, if you want to have a larger conversation, which I tweeted something, they're jokes and people are inferring, and that happens on Twitter. If I'm going to be snarky, I get it. They're inferring that I'm taking one side of it. I'll have a conversation about the defenses. I just think it's unfair to attribute what these players are doing to just defenses generally being terrible. Yeah, Atlanta's been bad on defense this year. That's part of it, is they've leaned into a model where they're just, they have some good defensive players, but I think the regression of Clint Capella has hurt them. Having Trae Young on the court at times, yeah, he's going to try hard, but he's always at a disadvantage. Yes, certain defenses are bad, and if you have to watch the Hawks, someone pointed this out on Twitter, and I agree with them, for 82 games to get frustrated by their defense, I get it. It's not like they were just not trying against Luka, though. And so it was really annoying to see that. And my bigger issue is people just not acknowledging how much more skillful players are on offense and what that has done to defenses. You want to go and say, they need to bring back hand checking. Shut the fuck up. No, they don't. When they had hand checking, you had these other defensive rules in place where you effectively had to hard double, where you couldn't double away from the ball, and it was harder to provide help. That now, okay, hand checking's not there, but you have to go up against these really complex defensive schemes, whether it's, they could double you away from the ball. The pre-switching has made a lot of things more difficult. Or you have these bigs who are just able, a Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis, what peak Draymond Green has done and still can do on certain nights. To say that defenses generally just suck now it's first of all, it's unfair to the players because there are a ton of great defenders here, but you have to account for so much on the offensive end. And it's not just because rule changes have been catered to offensive players. We saw the league, get rid of or more rigidly enforced last year. At the beginning, it was really like the freedom of motion, the unnatural movements, and then it kind of tapered off a little bit, but that's still part of it. That benefited the defense. And that's one thing that's going to benefit the defense. And then having the defensive 3-second rule, for instance. Yeah, if you want to get rid of that, I guess we could have a conversation, or if you want to get rid of, I mean, that's fine. But then it's, well, what is that going to do to charges, which people also want to get rid of, which is then going to, in theory, hamper what defenses can do. And so I think we skew too far towards one side of, oh, everything was done to benefit the offense. And one, flow, speed, and offensive highlights are important. What are you, Kofi on Twitter, quoted my tweet saying this, and I thought it was a great point. What highlights are being shared the most? You want to sit there and pretend to care about the nuance of defense? I know there are a ton of people in the business, Nekias Duncan, Tim Legler, Zach Lowe, Caitlin Cooper, Samson Folk, people in our Discord. Go join our Discord. You care about the nuances of defense. You understand the nuances of defense. All those people I named, there are people in Discord who are going to understand the nuances of defense better than I can. But you want to watch what even Draymond Green can still do on possessions. But let's use Rudy Gobert and his mobility this year, or what Anthony Davis is doing for LA. And you want to say that defenses just suck in general? There might be some really shitty teams right now, but do you know what makes defense truly so hard? Players on offense are so much more skillful. Let's look at kind of the defensive 3-second thing for a second. How's that? You had Tom Thibodeau coming in. He had like his overload defense and everything. And this forced the 3-point evolution changed that a little bit, but also the ability, you kind of force these cross-court passes. Players can just do that now. They can throw these one-handed skip passes across the court. There was Luka had a play in the 73-point game late in it. I think it was inside 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. So I don't even know if he was at 70 yet or he had 70, whatever he had. And he throws this wicked cross-court pass to Tim Hardaway Jr. after leaving his feet and having these defenders in front of him. And it goes right to Tim Hardaway Jr. He misses the three. Players are more skillful in that regard. You want to look at Joel Embiid? Tim Bomten said this on one of the recent low posts that Joel Embiid is Kevin Durant that's 100 pounds heavier. And it's not, they're completely different players, even if you tack on the 100 pounds, but he's talking about his shot profile. You have these skilled bigs, even Towns, not just the ability to get up threes, but the ability to put the ball on the floor and attack not from these post-up spots. And yeah, if you put hand checking back, okay, that's gonna maybe people will be really happy because there'll be players that are just more skilled in the post, which there are still a lot of skilled post players, by the way. Maybe you would have people that are going to be able to throw post entry passes, which is a lost art, I guess, in today's game. Do you want, if you went back to those defensive rules, do you want like the spacing back from the 90s, from the early 2000s? I mean, like if you're watching on YouTube, you want this spacing back from the 80s? Is this what you want, where you have like 8 to 9 guys below the free throw line at all times? Come on. Like, don't pretend that that's what you want. And if you have nostalgia, admit it for that era. I just miss growing up, and I know I'm mythologizing what defenses were, how tough and hard-nosed the game was. Yeah, go ahead. If you want to admit that, that's absolutely fine. Don't sit here and say that defenses suck and it's too offense heavy at the moment, when one, offense sells. It's just clear. Like them, implementing rules where you can't really break up fast breaks. Like that is something that helped the flow of the game. And it also, those are highlights you want to see. But there's also just the level of skill in these players to get back to what a Joel Embiid is doing. What even an Anthony Davis can do is largely a play finisher. You mentioned Cat. Like this is all just, it's not, people were all about small ball at one point, which the Warriors kind of popularized with the Draymond Green at center switch that they went to in 2015, whatever it was. But now it's about, people still misconstrued as small ball. They're just these like 6'9" to 7 foot overs. Look at Victor Wembanyama. Even look at Kristaps Porzingis. These just giants that are able to play like wings and guards. That is a skill level that you were not seeing earlier. I'm not going to pretend to have watched the game in the 80s and the 70s or even the 90s, mostly because I wasn't really alive or just too young to do it. But like, I remember games from the late 90s, and they were gritty as hell. They could be entertaining as hell, but it's incomparable, even in the early mid 2000s, to what we have today, where the game is just so much more. I find it more beautiful. There's the spacing element of this too, where defenses are just like, okay, you can't, like, you're trying to guard so many different things that are happening, but within such a much larger space, because you have certain teams are going to have guys where they have 4 guys who have the ability to, at all times, not just shoot, but they can shoot from long distances, or they can put the ball on the floor and play make or attack the basket. And so it's stretching defenses to the point of breaking, and they're trying to find ways to adjust. And some of these teams still do a great job. Look at Rudy Gobert this season, who I think is probably going to be the runaway favorite for Defensive Player of the Year, unless something happens. I've never seen him move like this, even in Utah when he was winning defensive player of the year awards basically every season, it felt like. And there's still skill there. It's not on every team. It's not present in every player, but let's not try to dilute down these offensive feats simply because you think that the defensive rules have changed. And I'm really tired. Now, look, I'll just cop to not understanding enough about, I can appreciate and watch players like Anthony Davis, Draymond Green, Bam Adebayo, the guys you have to watch away from the ball. And even just like someone, Scotty Barnes, I talked about this with Samson Folk, who has made just real strides on the defensive end because of what he's able to do away from the restricted area now, or what he's able to do as a helper. You look at help defenses now compared to then in the hand checking era, go back and one, it just the rule changes probably wouldn't allow, but like the way that you're helping, like that these guys are rotating, where they're coming from, the gaps that they're shooting, that's like, I'm not going to sit here and say, is this the best? Because one, I'm going to just cop to it. I don't know enough about, the defensive mechanics, and it's even like the nitty gritty X's and O's, but like you can watch and see that these players on defense, a lot of them are super skilled. It's just there are better shot makers who can hit these contested looks. And the thing that I just take issue to is not everyone. I want to loop everyone under the same umbrella. Too many people they automatically go towards hand checking. What is that going to stop? Like, if you want to put back hand checking, so then are you going to bring back the other defensive rules to where, LeBron only has to beat his one guy who, they could bump him off a little bit, but LeBron, even at age 39, is a fucking Adonis. He's going to get by that guy, and then you're not going to be able to, since you can only really hard double, if he's going to get by that one, you're not going to be able to, help's not going to be as close. And that's just going to make life easier on him. Is that what you want to see? Like, there's going to be flaws in anything you do. Let's not pretend that hand checking is just going to make this like fix everything, or that there's one rule that would change everything. What do you want to see? And don't tell me bring hand checking back like it's going to fix everything. And don't say the game is broken just because there's so much offense, when it's not just because defenses suck. Yeah, there are some defenses that suck. I think it's the skill of the players. Even look at this is how skilled the league is. Look at the gap right now, I think, between the top of the league, even the middle of the league, and the bottom of the league. When you're talking about 450 some odd players being in this league, because the roster spots are weird and there's two-way guys playing, and the talent level is so high, and even the more casual fans kind of understand like the 6th or 7th or 8th guy on these rosters and how good they could be, there's that gap. So you're always going to see this separation. When you see a Luka go up against Atlanta Hawks defense, he's going to torch them. And look, Jalen Johnson had some really good possessions early on defensively against Luka Doncic, and Luka Doncic was just better because this, like, even him is like 6'8", 6'9", whatever he is, and he's like very girthy, but his change of cadence, his ability to hit these wild perimeter shots. And so are you mad about the 3-point evolution and the fact that guys can hit step backs, so they're going to pull up from 27 plus feet? What are you nostalgic for? Like a different shot selection? And there are people who think that there's just like a lack of variety when it comes to NBA offenses. If there's not, it's just the way that these players are getting to their shots. Yeah, there might be some ISO heavy guys, but they're taking different kinds of shots. They're doing different things with the ball. But these offenses, even if their shot profiles look eerily similar, they're going about different ways to get their shots. The way Oklahoma City plays on offense is so much different from how the Dallas Mavericks play on offense. It's night and day might be extreme, but there's huge differences there. And I just don't understand how you could watch these games, even just choppering in tangentially, and be like, well, this sucks. This is unwatchable. It's so hard to defend now, not because of the rules, but because of how skilled the players are. More than that, even if there are some adjustments you can make, and even Luka has said it's harder to score 30 playing in Europe than it is here. There are the rules that go into that. You can play more physical defense. There's also the goaltending stuff where that doesn't matter. You want to see that in the NBA. You want to have a conversation about these, it's fine. And you want to school me on, well, you're not acknowledging this, or there's not this rule. Actually, hand checking would prevent this. The hand checking stuff very quickly. I still believe that lateral movement on the defensive end is more important than anything right now, which is why some of the most valued defensive players are guys who are able to switch, hang in space against smaller players, or even just you look at Giannis, where there's these predominantly off-ball disruptors. But then you can still have these, like, Brooke Lopez, runner-up defensive player of the year last year. But then look who he lost to, with Jaren Jackson Jr., who does everything on defense. And so are you saying there's a lack of just skill where guys aren't being coached defense coming into the league? I just find that very hard to believe. I really think it has more to do with the skill level of these players on the offensive end. And it's evolved in so many different areas to where, yeah, we were harping on small ball, and there are still teams that you want to get to it and downsize at center a little bit. But a lot of it's just like, no, we want dudes that are big, but they play like guards and wings there. And so I don't want to hear it anymore, especially after performances. Like, you can play both sides, but you're not a fucking cool ass edgelord by telling me that, well, why can't it be both? Why are you taking absolutism here? It's not absolutism. It's, I want to be able to appreciate offensive detonations that were not coming unethically. Like, we go back to the ethical hoops that were born from, I think that was the Suns or whatever. Yeah, there were elements of when Karl-Anthony Towns went into the 60s. Okay, it felt like, yeah, they're really force feeding him. He's forcing it. He got benched at one point. I get it. And you want to talk about that? We can. But like, what did Luka do? What was the shot hunting that Luka did? Or we're just going to say, well, the Hawks are so bad on defense, Luka didn't really do anything incredible. Shut up with that. Like, enjoy this. And you could be egregious like me, where it's like, I just want to see the offense. I'm here because S. Barahini quote tweeted my tweet with this as well. I'm here because I want to see someone break Wilt's record. That's being honest about it. If you're sitting here and be like, I want to see games in the 70s and the 80s again, like, not from the, well, maybe the eras, but by the way, some of those offenses, like back then, though, they were just lighting it up. The spacing is just so different now. So just say that you want to see a slower game, a less fluid game. You could say that you're nostalgic for it. Can you also maybe admit, though, but perhaps now in the moment, am I a prisoner, a captive of the moment, and mythologizing a little bit of what we're watching? I'll admit it, maybe. Could you also admit, though, that you're mythologizing that defenses are this bad and that it's not really more about just how skilled the offensive players are? Why can't we all just admit that? I'm just against denigrating using this, what we just watched with Embiid and Luka Doncic specifically, as a springboard for, well, the game sucks today, or it's unwatchable, or defenses are unwatchable. You don't know enough about defense. And even my baseline level of defensive knowledge. You don't know enough about defense if you can't watch what some of these teams are doing, some of these players are doing away from the ball on basically every single team, and appreciate the level of skill and complexity that goes into it. And you want to say that three-pointers have ruined the league, or that defenses are just, they're just incapable. You want to, like, even a team that sucks on offense this year and their spacing can be wonky. Let's use Miami Heat, where it's just like, Eric Spoelstra is going to employ every single thing under the sun, where they've had good offenses in the past with spacing that you would call less than ideal, where they're just going to free guys up with flare screens and cuts and the stuff that they're going to be able to do, because his coaching in that case absolutely matters. Or let's look at what offenses are doing where they're running after made shots, or they're getting the ball ahead so quickly because they have a guy in Tyrese Halliburton who can see the floor so well from everywhere and can throw these launching passes where even if defenses are set, you're just playing at such a high speed, or he's throwing these, looking at Luka Doncic's passes specifically, that you can do whatever you want, and he's going to be able to throw that cross-court pass no matter what you do. Or that, oh, all right, well, what are you supposed to do to stop one guy if they're able to stretch you with four guys out at once, and then a rim runner who's going to give you that vertical gravity? The floor balance has changed, and I think it's made for a better product, yeah, on offense, but just the fluidity of the game anyway, and it's made me appreciate watching like defenders who can be absolutely dominant, or defenses that can shut down other teams. But if you're just going to sit here and generalize that the product is unwatchable and defenses have ruined the league, I just can't get on board with that. When you look at what some of these, like so many players we have right now, thrown back in the hand checking era, they just would have been offensive anomalies. And they're not. It's just become the norm. And you will see this in the playoffs. And let's use it. And maybe they skewed too far. I'm not meaning to, we go back even further. But Andre Robertson, where it's just like he was such a dominant defender, but he became unplayable at points in the playoffs. At that era of Oklahoma City Thunder basketball, we saw it last year with Cleveland. And this is not, I'm just using an example. Did they not give him enough of a chance? But Isaac Okoro, where defenses are going to be able to ignore him now in the playoffs, his value changes in the postseason in theory. I'm not picking on him specifically, and he has gone through stretches and seasons where he's hit his threes on moderate to low volume very well. It's just that's the most recent memory of, well, that player was certainly like, yeah, did JB Bickerstaff, was he too quick with the hook there? I don't know. And so the fact that shooting and floor balance has become this important to where I think that you're going to see teams bench shooting liabilities in the playoffs tells you all you need to know about the skill level of offenses in general. And the other thing here is And this is like, and by the way, you look at when the NBA has made some of these changes that were supposed to benefit offenses. I think when they really started enforcing like some of the different defensive rules, it was like 2004, whatever it was. You didn't see like the offensive ratings just shoot up all of a sudden because of those rules. Even now, you're not dealing with like the foul attempt rate, the average this year. It's kind of right in line with what we've been seeing over the past decade. Yes, the offensive rating, I think it's 116.3 outside garbage time, the average offensive rating. Yeah, that's really high. Let's see if it sticks for the entire season. We also, a lot of the times, yeah, sometimes it's higher in the postseason. A lot of times we see the offensive rating average drop in the playoffs. And that would be my other point on this is, and this was a mailbag question we had at one point. I don't know if I ever answered it. What makes the postseason so much different from the regular season? And it's when you're playing so many games against different teams, 3-4 games in 7 nights or whatever it ends up being. And sometimes they're back to backs. You just can't game plan for one team the way that you can over the course where you know you're going to face them up to 7 times or at least 4. And you're just able to prep for that with 1 to 2 days off in between. And it's more feasible to practice and the travel's easier because you're playing 2-game sets, 2-2. And then yes, if it goes to 7, 1, and 1. It's just when you have that time to dedicate it. So maybe your problem is the NBA needs fewer games. That's a conversation we can have off of this. Like this is more nuanced than people are giving it credit for. And I will say though, what I am very dismissive of is the people that watch these performances and say, well, why can't we be, because I'm this faux intellectual and I think on a higher level than you, I'm willing to acknowledge both sides and you're not. No, I'm an absolutist when it comes to appreciating great performances. And are we seeing more of these historical scoring outings now more than ever? Sure. What is the root of why is that happening? Ask yourself that. Is it because that defenses suck or everything's been catered to the offensive players? Or is it more so because these are offensive players that are more skilled in ways that we didn't see in decades past? Even look at the players that are breaking these records. Like, yeah, Devin Booker, 6'5", dropping 60. Like, that's kind of the more traditional, like, archetype of score. If you were watching the NBA in the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s, like that's what you were thinking, unless you wanted the post up brutes in there. But also what Devin Booker can do as a passer is just like, and an off-ball mover, that's the other thing, is the off-ball movement in this league, in part because of the space. And if you think that there's not physical defenses being played, look at what Steph Curry has to do a lot of the times when he's pinballing around. And it happens more in the playoffs because, again, teams are game planning around him. There's this theory that there is a softer whistle. You do see on a lot of seasons, you'll see the foul attempt rate average drop in the postseason. A lot of that is just better game planning. And so maybe it's not so much defenses suck then, or that teams don't care about defense, that everything's catered to the offense so much as, well, there's too many games in the regular season. All of that discussion. Do I think if there was 60 games in a year, do I think that we would have had a week where we just had, 4 players scored 60 or more? I think, unless I'm misremembering. Maybe not, but like, what is the problem with that? Were those games not entertaining for you? Yeah, if you're a Wolves fan, you're mad that they lost to the Hornets, and Chris Finch was pissed as hell that Towns was hunting as much as he was. But the Timberwolves were also acknowledging, like, we knew what Joel Embiid had that night. We were watching. I think Ant said this, so we wanted to get him the ball. That's cool too. I don't know how you can watch specifically the Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid games and come away thinking that, oh, that's just like, this is catered for them to do that. I think some of the shot selection stuff is, you look at the 3-point volume, that's going to be conducive to scoring more points. It's also conducive to higher variance, by the way. But hey, the fact that we just have a 6'8" Luka Doncic handling the ball like a guard and being one of the best passers in the NBA, can hit these ridiculously difficult threes, even if they're contested or if they're from super far out, like that also goes into it as well. And so if you want to sit here and complain about the lack of defense in the NBA, and it's even, there's people I respect on Twitter and still respect, just using it to point out like that defenses have made this easier, or the defensive rules or the offensive rules have made this easier. I call bullshit there. I think there are both sides of the ball. You can argue, rewind 30 years, that there are aspects of it that were easier, where it's for defenses specifically. I think that, yes, okay, they were able to hand check, but like the fact that defenses now are able to like throw out different types of help or double teams where they don't have to be hard on ball double teams, that actually benefits the defense compared to what it was previously. And I can't remember the exact year that they got rid of that. There was like they had trouble enforcing it at first, and then they really like cracked down on it. They have the defensive when they got rid of illegal defense, and then they implemented the defensive 3-second rule. If you want them to get rid of that, but you also want them to get rid of banned charges, I feel like the other thing here is people just want to be curmudgeonly complainers. It's like and it's not, oh, they're old and they missed the game. I think some people have been I respect the people that are like, I just miss watching that. I'm nostalgic for it. If you're nostalgic, I get it. I'm nostalgic for certain things in life that, when I was an actual teenager, that I know there's no rational, my life is better off because of this, but you kind of miss the element of that. You want to admit that, that's fine, but don't pretend like the game is somehow inferior to what it was or more compromised than it was. It's not. It's better. It's better than it ever was. It's more complex than it ever was. And part of that is just, I don't know if people are in their little echo chambers, and we cover the entire league around these parts, and they get mad that we don't know like the exact rotation patterns on a Tuesday night in January. It's the second end of a back-to-back, and they're missing 3 of their starters, and this is what would happen at the 4-minute mark of the second quarter. That speaks to local coverage and podcasting, which is really good, but it's never been easier to sidestep divergent thoughts. And so like you zero into this, and it's harder for you to think outside the box. And I don't think that's what I'm doing here, where I'm not acknowledging that some of what I say could be wrong, or maybe I'm just glossing over points. I will admit that. I'm saying that discussion, I hate the idea of having it after a performance like Luka's or Joel Embiid's, where like that shit was iconic. I call it shit. That stuff was iconic. And appreciate it. If you just want to be mad about something, which is what people online or a lot of sports fans want to do, or if it's not the player on their team doing it, but let's not overgeneralize things by saying, no, it's this, or pretend, well, I'm actually playing both sides because what Luka did was cool, but defenses actually suck now. No, you just don't. And I don't understand enough of what's going on defense. That's the level of complexity and there are some people, I'm not saying other analysts don't, like a Nekias Duncan, Caitlin Cooper, Samson Folk, like all those great folks. They understand what they're talking. They know the super duper nuance of that. It is just so much harder to defend offenses, not because the league has kowtowed to them, but because the players are more skilled than ever, because the schemes are the stuff that you do to get guys open away from the ball with some of these teams. And then there's, even if you want to go to a more basic approach where it's okay, this team is heavy ISO, the fact that these guys can score in isolation when there's all this help or these traps coming at them, when there are guys who can, all right, even if you force a switch on a pick and roll, the fact that Rudy Gobert can just hang in space now, or if you still don't believe Rudy Gobert could do that, okay, well, Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, Draymond Green, and yes, those are defensive superstars, but Luka's an offensive superstar. Luka's one of the 10 best players in the game. And when you're looking at like the players that just scored all these points, Towns might be the outlier when you're looking at, oh, well, where do they stand in the hierarchy? They're not a top 10 guy. He's not an all-NBA guy right now. One, he's as close as you get to without it. And also, he's a matchup nightmare on offense, even if he's playing the 4, because of his size and the things that he is able to do, even in the post, by the way, but also just being able to face up, put the ball on the deck. Like even doing that in space, by the way, at that size is incredible. But when you're able to do it through traffic, and again, that game got out of control. I will have that conversation about that. The Luka game didn't get out of control. The Embiid game didn't get out of control. This is just the real absolutism is thinking that offenses have it easy and that defenses do not somehow, or that defenses are just plain worse in general. Do teams care less about the regular season? I mean, maybe there's more wear and tear on their bodies because the game is played so much more fluidly and you have to account for so many different things. And you're going up against these physical specimens. I'm not just talking about strength and size, but mobility in size that's going to wear on you, or chasing around these players who are pinballing away from the action, like a Steph Curry. Remember tracking prime Klay Thompson, like my God. And it's okay. So if you don't want to see that, you want to get back to where, well, the spacing is just clogged and there's really no room for them to move anyway. And if that's what you want, that's fine. That's not what that doesn't actually make the game more aesthetically pleasing or more entertaining. That just means you're nostalgic for something that was, mathematically, functionally not as effective as what we're seeing now. And so anyone who thinks that the game is unwatchable except for the playoffs, I'm never going to get on board with you. And I just think that people who default to, well, if you like, there's no hand checking, that's not going to fucking change most of this stuff. It's just not. And so if you want to have a conversation about what could be changed, what should be changed, what shouldn't have been changed, what brought back. Is there stuff we should borrow from the way that is happening in Europe? I would love to see just like get rid of goaltending. I would absolutely love to see that. Like, let's force guys, like the stuff that would do to players who are taking floaters or laying things up instead of dunking. I don't know if DeAndre Ayton would ever score again, to be honest with you, but that was me. But like, it would make life harder on like the floater extraordinaires there. It'd make harder on Luka with his floaters. It'd make life harder on Trae Young with his floaters. Manuel quickly with his floaters, although they've been pretty rough since he's been in Toronto anyway. I get it, and I think it's fine. There are going to be people that just disagree with me, I'm sure, in Discord, who think that I'm just flat out assholey wrong. I'm only being so forceful here because to not be able, if you're saying, well, I appreciate what I saw, but however, no, then you're not appreciating it. You're using it as a launching pad to debate something that really just doesn't hold enough merit to me or give me something more nuanced than bring back hand checking or because offensive players shoot so many threes. Bring me something that actually matters and then we can have the conversation. But we can appreciate, I just feel like collectively we should be able to appreciate certain things we just watched, and the Luka and Embiid performances were one of them. And so, and again, I respect the people that are just like, well, I don't really have a problem with defenses. It's or the way offense is being played right now. It's just like, I'm kind of nostalgic for this. I saw a lot of that. You know what? That's fine. I respect that. You could say that. You're still kind of appreciating what you just saw, though. And to use this as a Luka, that's when it really took off, was for some reason. I guess because it was, again, we saw 4 players drop, whatever. It was the second 70-point game in a week. Now we see more of them. Donovan Mitchell did it. I don't know. I honestly don't know what, as my second screen goes off in the background. I honestly don't actually know what kind of incited, well, let's go after. Like, let's have this conversation now. I honestly don't. Maybe because it was the Hawks defense. Like, people were tired of watching that. But even they made adjustments. I thought Jalen Johnson did his damnedest when he found himself on Luka during early in the game. And then the Hawks were really crowding Luka, forcing the ball out of his hands down the stretch. And to his credit, he got rid of it a lot of the time, too. He still took some shots. You're like, all right. But you know what? When you're on a heater, that's also what you do. It wasn't at the cat level that it was in that Minnesota-Charlotte game. And so I probably came off very angry and curmudgeonly myself here. That's fine. Because I am. This is a ranting. This is raving. I'm like 30 minutes in. I'm going to cut this off very shortly, I promise. I just think that and I'll throw myself in here, we oversimplify so many things. And just this idea that the game is somehow compromised because defenses aren't allowed to do enough, or just defenses suck now. It's incorrect, and it's just flat out wrong. And I think it's okay to not be mad all the time or need to find something to be mad at. There are a lot of things with this league that the officiating is probably an issue on some level. And there are rules at both ends of the floor that would be good to change. I don't know if I'm team ban the charge or not. What would that do to the offensive ratings? It would probably absolutely skyrocket. I do wish that the kind of unnatural motion of offensive player was probably more strictly enforced or more frequently enforced. Like, we saw a lot of stuff that was going early. I think it was 22-23 season. And then it was like, as it progressively went on, felt like they got a little bit looser with it. So yeah, there are things that I'm happy about, but I'm not going to use a specific performance and say, well, this wouldn't have fucking happened if the league and defenses knew what they were doing. That's what I take issue with. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the podcast to Spotify, Apple. And if you can leave ratings, 5-star ratings, and also reviews on Apple, written reviews go a long way. It takes 30 seconds to do. Please go there, help juice us up the charts. And if you've done all of those things, consider telling people about us, recommending the podcast, sharing our content. That can help the algorithm, I'm assuming, on YouTube. Or just tell people about shout us out on Twitter. Shout us out anywhere. I'll see it. I'll interact with you. We appreciate it. Join our Discord. We can have more discussions like this where I'm sure that there are people in Discord, and I respect the world out of everyone who's active in there that will disagree with me. And that's fine too, because I am fine with a difference of opinion. I just don't like when it feels disingenuous and it's using specific performances to frame it as this larger issue, as if this wouldn't have happened, or it's a symptom of, we're going to take the way that the Hawks are defending and use it as an example of like, defenses just suck now. Like, if your takeaway for what the Hawks are doing defensively is your indictment of the entire NBA, like, are you only watching the Hawks? I mean, kudos to anyone who's watched 82 Hawks games. I think Luther on Twitter was the one who said that to me. It was like, good, man, that must be tough sledding. I just think we can have that discussion, but we don't need to use what are just objectively iconic, difficult, absurd performances to do it and to then diminish those accomplishments. Yes, we're seeing history broken more frequently. It's not just because offense is so easy. It's because the players on offense are so bonkers, so complexly, deeply, incredibly good and talented and anomalous to eras past. That's why we're seeing these records broken. And yes, the shot selection has a lot to do with it, but the fact that they can make these shots, there's so many guys who can make these types of shots now. That's something worth appreciating, I think. So please remember to subscribe. I'm grateful for all the support that anyone who's been here a while gives us. If you're new, look, say you're new around these parts and that you're still listening to the pod. That was really cool when we get it in Discord, when I get DMs or emails that say, hey, I was new and someone recommended this to me. We just want to hear how you found us, or if you're new, join the Discord, follow us on the socials. Links are in the YouTube and podcast description. Ditto for the Discord. Until next time, and as always, I leave you with the shout out to the one, the only, the indelible, the man who can defend anybody and would have held Luka Doncic to under 10 points had he been in that game. Frank Ntilikina.